Hey everyone, let's talk about cameras, specifically cameras that I believe fit into the everyday carry category. I'll also do my best to make the argument for carrying a dedicated camera versus just a camera phone, and what I humbly believe to be one of the best cameras to ever hit the market for pros and amateurs alike. Let's take a quick look at the Osmo Pocket III, the ubiquitous GoPro and GoPro Max 360, and the Panasonic Lumix LX100 II. Now, this is not a camera review channel, and I won't be going over every spec and nuance of these cameras. I just want to approach them from an everyday carry lens. So, super quick backstory. My sisters and I were born with a camera in our hands, and at first it was little point and shoots, and later on my dad's well-worn, hand-me-down, full-size DSLRs and mirrorless bodies with some proper glass. In fact, this ancient 8-year-old Canon 5D Mark IV paired with a 2.8 7200 is still my favorite camera to shoot with. But this beast is just about as far from EDC friendly as you can get. Which brings me to this instead. This one is the one that started it all with the small action camera segment, the GoPro. In this case, the GoPro Hero 12. Now again, this video is not a deep dive into the cameras themselves. There are a great many YouTube videos out there made by far more qualified people than myself if you're interested in that. But I will say that from an EDC standpoint, it doesn't get much simpler than this. The Hero 12 builds on the classic GoPro design. Compact, rugged, and waterproof up to 33 feet or 10 meters without a case. Perhaps most importantly, its size and durability allow me to use and set this up in places where I could never fit a cell phone. It's designed to be about as bulletproof as possible, making it perfect for extreme sports, vlogging, or adventure travel. I often use the suction cup mount to get my incredible time-lapse driving shots for my home videos. It features a dual touchscreen setup from the front and rear view, which is highly responsive and useful for framing shots, particularly if you want to capture footage of yourself. The Hero 12 uses a 5.3K at 60 frames per second sensor, offering excellent image quality, sharp details, and vibrant colors. The ability to shoot in 4K at 120 FPS or 2.7K at 240 FPS is great for slow motion, and the 10-bit color and GP log provide way more flexibility for color grading in post-production, but only if that's your thing. But for casual users, the built-in color profile is excellent, especially in sunlight, making it a solid choice for video creators at any level. GoPro has made some massive improvements to its image stabilization over the last few iterations, allowing you to capture smooth footage in almost any situation. It is also capable of 27 megapixel still images. Although, honestly, it fails to keep up with the latest cell phones in terms of megapixels and ease of use if you're primarily interested in using it for stills. It also lacks any meaningful zoom. In terms of video quality, GoPro makes an exceptional product, with footage from these now being used in major Hollywood films. There is a seemingly endless supply of aftermarket mods and mounting options for these, and their size makes them easy to carry and unobtrusive to use in public. Okay, so for the bad. Honestly, it comes down to what your needs are. If you're not shooting in relatively extreme environments, or if you don't have a specific circumstance that requires the GoPro's unique feature set, you'll probably just be better off with your camera phone. Admittedly, GoPros are a one-trick pony, but boy is it a good trick, and they do it well. The GoPro Hero 12 is available for around $300 to $350 almost anywhere cameras are sold, and I have even seen them discounted at Costco. Okay, just really briefly, I want to mention the GoPro Max 360. As much as I love what this one does, capturing footage continuously in every direction and allowing you to select the framing in post-production, I almost never use it. The proprietary software you must use to stitch together the footage is clunky and a pain in the butt to use. And it appears GoPro has abandoned the market in favor of the superior Insta360 camera system. So, yeah, unless you just really need that on-top-of-the-world shot, it's a pass. If you're interested, you can still pick up a GoPro Max for around $350. Moving on to my favorite EDC-size video camera, the Osmo Pocket III. It's really an incredible little camera mounted on a 3-axis gimbal. With its 1-inch CMOS sensor and 4K 120 FPS recording capability, this pocket-sized camera delivers exceptional image quality and smooth footage in a variety of shooting conditions. It's ultra-compact, lightweight, and it makes it easy to carry it around for travel or just everyday shooting. In fact, it's my go-to travel camera now, and all of the footage outside of the studio comes from this little camera. It's got a rotatable 2-inch touchscreen on the back, providing an easy and intuitive user experience. is really in a class by itself and does outperform the latest cell phones when it comes to capturing stabilized video footage. The 1-inch sensor makes a huge difference in low light performance and dynamic range, producing sharper details and richer colors, compared to just about anything else out there. The Osmo Pocket does support D-Log-M and 10-bit color, again, only if that's important to you, but the simple video for beginners presets produces a great image right out of the camera, making it a great simple home video camera or tool for video enthusiasts alike. You'll get around 160 minutes of recording time per charge, depending on the settings and temperature. It does support fast USB-C charging. On the connectivity side, the camera supports Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, and seamless smartphone integration via the DJI Mimo app, making it easier to transfer files and control settings remotely. And although there's a lot of online debate about it, I've used the app and find it really easy and enjoyable to use. I would also like to say that if, like me, you had the Osmo Pocket 1 and 2 and have not upgraded to the Pocket 3, it's a dramatic upgrade from the previous versions. As for my gripes about it, well, the biggest drawback is the lack of a replaceable battery. Like all rechargeable batteries, they do lose their ability to hold a charge over time. And you can use a simple power bank and USB-C charging cable for near limitless shooting, but it impedes its ease of use. I also wish that they would have found a way to get a 3.5mm mic jack into the unit, although one is available with an optional adapter. Bottom line, its size makes it simple to pocket, or in my case, EDC bag carry. And perhaps most importantly, and I don't really know how to quantify this little camera is just so much fun to work with. This little camera has been around the world with my family and I still use it probably once a week, if not more. The significant ease of use and the degree to which the video quality is superior to my iPhone camera does, at least for me, justify carrying it around. For everyday simple video shoots, or even simple YouTube production shoots just like this channel, I'd rather use my Pocket Osmo. The DJI Pocket Osmo III is available for around $500 in its base configuration. Alright, here is my pick for one of the best cameras to ever hit the market. And this is the Panasonic Lumix LX100 II. And I am one of the shrinking few who firmly believe point-and-shoot cameras still have their place in the world. And in that category, I believe this camera is just unparalleled. The LX100 is several years old now, and although no longer in production, it can still be found at a lot of online retailers. Without getting too far into the weeds, this is a co-build camera with the Leica D-Lux 8, meaning much of the significantly more expensive Leica's DNA can actually be found in this camera. Let me begin by identifying who this camera is not for. This is not a camera for amateur photographers. The LX100 II is a genuinely ambitious design with a camera body that is feature-laden with a vast assortment of tactical control surfaces, and users who do not have a firm grasp on how a camera works can find this frustrating, if not nearly impossible to use outside of shooting it in fully automatic. And if you just shoot in fully automatic, which is fine, you would just be better off with a cell phone. Additionally, I have found it very easy to accidentally change a setting or two while using the camera, which pulls it back into a manual setting. This is not a camera for people looking to move up from a point-and-shoot to a DSLR or mirrorless camera. Although it has many features in common with a full-size body, it does have a fixed limited zoom lens. Alright then, so who is this camera actually for? Well, this is a nearly perfect camera for experienced photo enthusiasts and even professional photographers. Now stay with me here. On the photography side, this camera produces stunningly good images, and the 17 megapixel micro Four Thirds sensor, paired with a super fast Leica 1.7 to 2.8 24-75mm lens, allows for a stellar degree of depth of field and creative options for a point and shoot. Of course, it's not as good as my full frame camera bodies. And on the video side, this camera produces a very nice image, and the ability to shoot in 4K is great. Still, the camera isn't as impressive in low light and uses a codec with a high degree of compression. The absence of a flip-out screen and lack of image stabilization makes it irrelevant for vloggers or any high-end video work. The camera also does not have an external microphone or headphone jack, and its small size and weight does not lend itself to handheld shooting. It's underwhelming when compared to the Panasonic S-series cameras that we shoot the show on. But with all that said, there still is just a magic about shooting with this camera. The LX100 II is sleek, both retro-inspired and modern, with a solid metal body that feels premium and robust. Despite its compact size, the camera is satisfyingly solid. Well, okay, I mean, it's a little bit heavy, but that translates instead into it feeling substantial without being cumbersome. And it still easily fits into all but the smallest of EDC bags. The dedicated dials for shutter speed, aperture, and exposure compensation give it a tactile, manual camera feel, appealing to those who just love physical controls over clunky digital menus. It's clearly designed for street photography and travel, and I've done a fair bit of this with this camera. I find myself shooting in black and white color profiles more and more, and I find the lack of a significant zoom to actually be a good thing. It forces me to zoom with my feet and really think about shot composition, reminding me of the great Robert Capa quote, "If your shots aren't good enough, you're not close enough." This is a niche camera in a class all its own, and if it sounds like I'm writing an obituary for this camera, as much as it pains me to say this, I probably am, as it appears to be in a class headed for extinction with every new generation of cell phone camera. Call me a photographic Luddite if you will, but cell phones are for snapshots. Cameras like these are for photographs. The LX100 series of cameras are so well designed with brilliant ergonomics and performance that, well, when I have the chance to shoot with it, I'm reminded of why I fell in love with photography in the first place. And that to me is worth every penny. And yes, I'm keenly aware of the rabid resurgence of 35mm film, but that's an expensive and all-consuming rabbit hole that I'm not ready to go down. Just yet. But no matter what you use, photography is a frame of mind. See you next time.